if you're watching on TalkTV, you can see a beautiful pastoral scene there beside you. But I know all is not well on many of the farms. Why have the people you represent decided to take mass action with their Massey Fergusons?
It really is a call, an emergency call. It's a last ditch. Help us. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to afford to feed the British people for much longer, and that will mean that Britain will fall to rely on imported food, which is quite scary. That's our national security, actually. You know, if one of our enemies can starve us, we don't need to have any nuclear defence weapons, do we?
Are things really that bad? Food security in this country is something we don't talk about nearly enough, but at least we're talking about it now, Liz. You represent a lot of farmers who make really, really good food. We've got incredibly high standards in this country, but we also import a lot of food, which often doesn't have the same standards as we have in the UK. Just unpack that a bit for people who may not be fully aware and may just be in the supermarket shelves. We're in a cost of living crisis, and people may well say, well, actually, I just want the cheapest food I can buy to feed my family.
Yes, I appreciate that it's difficult for people. You know, we're feeling the cost of living crisis as much as everybody else. Our inputs have gone up by, well, up to 50% in some cases. But
why
ultimately,
is that?
what has changed?
Sorry to interrupt you, Liz. Why have those costs gone up to such a degree? Just explain that to people, why farmers' costs have gone up. Obviously, inflation and everything's rising in price, but just tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, there's three different things, really. We've had COVID, Ukraine, but also we've had Brexit. So everything has been compounded by those three different things. We've got a labour crisis because of Brexit. That's driven up labour costs. And there's more red tape associated with getting labour in to work on farms. We have got trade barriers with our biggest market, the European Union. That's more costs. We've also lost subsidies. So foods that English farmers have, the Welsh and Scottish haven't as yet. So all of those things are really sort of compounding the cost. And there's more import controls coming in from Europe. And we buy commodities, inputs from across the world, and a lot of them are linked to energy. We all know what's happened with energy. So fertilizer is directly linked to energy. And so those costs have gone through the roof. And that means that our starting point is very difficult. It means it's very risky to grow food, which is why when we're offered the environmental schemes, whilst we don't want to be park keepers, we believe we can care for the environment and do the food as well. It means that many farmers are looking at this and thinking, well, I'll just, I'm best to hedge and go into these schemes and wait and see what happens, see if inflation calms down. And get through the crisis like that. But
and tell us about those schemes.
We always refer to 60% self-sufficiency. There's been no real efforts to actually determine how much that has been impacted. I would imagine it's really quite significant, because the government decided to only look at food security every 3 years.
Tell me a little bit about those rewilding schemes, the kind of ideas that some people say it's people, civil servants sitting in London who don't know what it's like to farm as you do, I know, in Wiltshire, and who don't understand the countryside, who say that there should be this rewilding, that the environment should be the #1 priority rather than food production. Tell us your thoughts on that, Liz.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really good if we could get all of the civil servants to come down, camp on our farm and work here for a month and understand the countryside. That would be great. Look, farmers, my husband's family have farmed for centuries, and farmers pass down that knowledge generation to generation. To think that we actually don't look after the countryside is just an insult. Farmers understand that their farm is a factory, and if we don't keep it up, then we're not able to produce food. Food is actually a growing, living thing, and also it's not only humans that eat this food, wildlife eats it too. We have the best farming system in the world. Our emissions are only 10%, and we're importing food now, since Brexit in particular, from the other side of the world, where their emissions are 30% plus. So this just doesn't make sense. And I think we're very good at attacking ourselves and saying, and sort of blaming ourselves for different things. The population has increased in Britain in the last 100 years, a lot, and mainly because of my generation, the baby boomers. we were the biggest population, we're all living longer, but we had less children. And eventually this population issue will work through. But Britain is a fantastic country. We're very good at growing grass. 70% of our farmland is only able to support grass. That means that we're very good at producing livestock. We produce livestock by mostly being out in fields eating grass. That is a very natural process. It also looks beautiful and it's healthy. And that is really what we need to do. But to stand down our livestock farming, to then import it from feedlots in Brazil, Australia, America, Canada, is just sacrilege. Because then what we're going to plant flowers. And again, planting flowers means getting your tractor out, drilling, using fossil fuels to do that. We know where our cattle feed. That's it, it's grass. Yeah. They just eat it, it grows again. It's actually a very natural process.
Liz, you're from you're from Safe British Farming. You talked a lot about Britain, but I wonder how inspired you've been by other nations across Europe dealing with similar but in some ways quite different issues. Greece, Germany, Portugal, Poland and France. They've been demonstrating against the EU, of which we are not a member, of course, but they have been talking about regulation, cheap imports, some of the same kind of issues. But I wonder how much of an inspiration that was, and whether you feel that the methods that they have are the ones you want to employ. Certainly the tractor protest is something that a number of those countries have done, but they've sometimes done it in slightly different ways, the farmers there.
We've been protesting against the Agriculture Act since it was a bill. So we've been doing this at Save British Farming since 2020. I think perhaps it has incentivised some other farmers to realise that they do have to break their mould, because when we were in the EU, we relied on the French farmers, actually, funnily enough, to resist trade deals as they were coming through. But we are British. It's not in our culture to, and particularly, I don't want to go out and destroy things. We would prefer to do a carnival, a Morris dancing type protest. And that's what we will continue to do, to use our heads, our brains, and have a strategy to ensure that we engage with you, the media. That's what we want. We want the people to hear our message.
Well,
and
but you got
really
our attention, Liz.
Behind us.
I mean, you've been protesting about this for 3-4 years. You got our attention by having a very visual, very disruptive, although, the traffic in Westminster, you probably didn't make it go any slower, but it was certainly very loud in Westminster yesterday. It's very visually arresting to see all those tractors there. You got people's attention and got people talking about the very important issues that you've been trying to get people to talk about for the last 3 or 4 years. It was effective.
Yeah, and I'd really like to say a huge thank you to Met Police. They were absolutely brilliant. And I felt so proud to be British yesterday. It was a great celebration. And we really feel as farmers that the public are behind us. And the whole strategy is really to get the people behind us and to force Westminster to change.
Do you think
because
it will?
We want British food.
Do you think it will change? Do you think they'll take notice of you? Do you think the Environment Secretary will take notice of you? Do you think perhaps an incoming Labour administration will change things? Your protest was a success in terms of awareness, but will things change, do you think? How much confidence do you have in that?
We're really measured, and we understand that this is the beginning, and we are very, very determined. I think you saw that yesterday. It takes great determination. One of our cauliflower growers came all the way from Broadstairs, which is a heck of a long way in a tractor.
Especially in a tractor.
And yes, and we're in this for the long haul, and we're not going to go away. We're going to get bigger, not smaller. There's more of us than there are MPs. And what's so exciting is that all of us are sitting around the table. We're all agreed that this is the way forward. And we're fighting for our businesses, but we're also fighting for our country, because we feel this is a fundamental food security, national security issue. We all have to eat, every single one of us. And this gets to the core of the matter. Without food, we die. And that's simple. And the way the world is at the moment, it's quite scary. We feel that food security is uppermost. And that's what Westminster and MPs and PPCs hoping to be elected, that's what they need to understand too, because we're sure that the British people are with us on this. And I think they trust us because they've lost trust in the politicians. And that's where we're going to continue to go. And we will do the best we can. And we're really grateful for the support that media have given us too. And thank you very much from all of us.
Well, very good to talk to you, Liz, and very refreshing to hear someone who has a peaceful protest with a very clear objective, and you actually thanked the Metropolitan Police. I think others could take a very, very big leaf out of your book. Thank you very much indeed to Liz there, who is the founder of Safe British Farming, Liz Webster there, talking to us from her farm in Wiltshire.